Hello and welcome to News in Depth here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. The Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant in Ukraine has become one of the most explosive issues in Russia. Ukraine peace talks, Europe's largest nuclear facility, occupied by Russian forces since 2022, is both a critical energy asset and a potential nuclear hazard. President Vladimir Zelensky calls control of the plant a non-negotiable red line, while Moscow treats it as a strategic prize. Joining us is Matthew Day, senior online editor, TVP World, to break down why Zaporizhzhia could make or break any peace deal. Matthew, welcome back. Thanks for taking the time.
Happy to be back.
Pleasure to have you. Right, so as usual, we'll kick off with the soundbite and I'll get your take on it.
Okay.
Two questions remain. These are the station, Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant, how it will function, and the issue of territories. These are precisely the two questions that remain in the 20-point document.
OK, so the 20-point document he's talking about is the peace plan that has been thrashed out with the US and so on. Why is Zaporizhzhia such a thorny issue?
It is a thorny issue because both Ukraine and Russia dearly want to possess it, or in Russia's case, retain it, because it is it's a huge nuclear power station. It's got 6 reactors. Before the war, it produced around 25% of Ukraine's electricity, which is considerable, and therefore it is a prize asset, and it is a prize asset that both sides want.
All right, so let's just be clear. This is a Ukrainian asset, which the Russians occupied at the beginning of the war. Is it still in operation?
No, all the reactors are sort of dormant at the moment. They're not producing electricity. And therefore, the plant is still being operated in a way, but the electricity, the external supply of electricity, has to come in to keep the fuel cool. And if that didn't happen, then you could have a meltdown and then a severe nuclear disaster.
Like Chernobyl, but bigger, I assume.
Something like that. And the problem being for the plant is that this external supply has been interrupted, I think, about 11 times since the Russian occupation began. Power lines are brought down because of the fighting. And I think only this week or the end of last week that the International Atomic Energy Authority, they negotiated a temporary ceasefire so engineers could go in there, fix the power lines and restore power back to the plant, which was running on temporary diesel generators, which is not a good
but it's not a long-term solution, certainly.
No, it's not. And relying on temporary supplies or very vulnerable supplies which are coming from Ukraine is not a good thing either. So this situation needs to be resolved very quickly.
So these are supplies for the cooling system?
That's right, yeah.
To stop the whole thing exploding?
Yeah, melting down, essentially.
Right. OK. So you mentioned that it supplied 20% of Ukraine's energy needs before the war started, but it's not working right now. So Ukraine's managing quite well without it. I mean, if all their power grids weren't being blown to pieces. Why is it such a red line then?
Well, actually, Ukraine is struggling, as you know, to maintain power supplies within the country itself. I was reading that actually if it lost Zaporizhzhia, it would take like 5 to 7 years or something like that to build up the capacity to replace the supply it loses from the power plant. And then you have a huge amount of cost involved in building up capacity. And it's also, apart from the very fact that it's very important to Ukrainian energy supply, it's a matter of pride as well. This is a prize asset. This is a very important
so it's symbolic as well?
Yes, without a shadow of a doubt. And it would be a really, really bitter pill to swallow for Ukraine to see this asset, which has been essentially stolen at the moment by Russia, to be fixed in Russia, to become part of Russia.
So why is Russia so obsessed or fixated on this then?
There are a couple of reasons. One, apparently Russia has an energy deficit within the south of Russia, so Zaporizhzhia could supply electricity to Russian homes, which is handy. But also, it's a tangible asset that Russia has gained from this war. And bear in mind that Russia is burning through lives at a very high rate, and has got very little return so far for this tremendous casualty rate it is incurring. But Zaporizhzhia is a huge power plant. It's a big, tangible asset. And Putin can go to the Russian people and say, hey, look, this is one thing that we have captured. This is now part of Mother Russia. And it might help mollify any sort of discontent within the Russian public over the conduct of the war and the huge losses the Russian population has incurred.
Right. I mean, we'll have another soundbite from the director of the Kyiv Energy Research Center, Alexander Karchenko, which is pretty much saying what you've just said. But I do want to delve into this a bit deeper. It should be coming up right now.
And for them, Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Plant is a potential huge source of electricity, which can cover a lot of problem for Moscow regime in the European part of countries. That's why they are so hardly fight for this station. It's not even military purpose. They really want the station in energy system.
Now, you see, what surprises me, and I'm sure will surprise others as well, you know, here's Russia saying, you know, we're the greatest supplier of oil and gas and so on, oh, certainly one of them in the world, and yet they don't have the energy to produce electricity for their own country. How does that work?
Possibly because of some sort of disorganization. Also, I would imagine that Russia now considers certain parts of eastern Ukraine as their territory, and therefore that has to be supplied as well, and their capacity might be limited in that area to begin with. But a problem for Russia, and also be a problem for Ukraine if Ukraine regains sovereignty of this plant, is the fact that because of the certain amount of the plant has been reliant on power from the outside just to keep it ticking over. But 2 years ago, Russia destroyed a dam which provided a huge amount of cooling water for the plant. And without that cooling water, it's very hard for the plant to function properly. And they think maybe out of the 6 reactors, only 1 or 2 of the reactors will be able to function once it is restarted. So Russia has announced plans they want to restart reactor 1, I believe, but that might be thrown into jeopardy by the lack of cooling water because of the dam destroyed, and the reservoir is really low now. It lacks sufficient cooling water, and without this cooling water, the whole plant may not be able to restart. And
so they might actually be fighting or arguing over something that may never actually get back online.
That there is that possibility for the
right.
Mm-hmm. And and just one other point about that. And this could sort of like cast doubts over US involvement in Zaporizhzhia, because I know the Ukrainians are trying to encourage maybe some sort of US interest in Zaporizhzhia as a way of moving along the peace deal. But if the Americans see, well, look, you don't have the water, this plant is not going to function, or if it is going to function, it's going to function at like 25% of its full capacity, we're not interested. They might just sort of say, well, we're not interested in this aspect. And
the Americans?
Yeah, the Americans. And therefore, Ukraine might lose a bit of leverage.
Right, okay, so that brings us back to the 20-point peace plan. And we heard at the beginning that this was a sticking point. What does the peace plan suggest that obviously President Zelensky is unhappy with?
Well, the original US plan had a sort of tripartite ownership of Zaporizhzhia, and the 3 owners would be Ukraine, Russia and the United States, with sort of the United States being the controller. Now,
actually running the plant.
Yeah, I think they would have the final say of where the energy went.
Okay.
But of course, this is completely unacceptable to Ukraine because basically, why would they deal with Russia, which has essentially stolen their plant? Why would they want to buy energy maybe from Russia when it's their energy?
Right.
And that's just why this is the completely unacceptable to Ukraine. And as I said, Ukraine has sort of come back with saying, well, okay, we have this plan which involves sort of a joint venture between Ukraine and Russia. I mean, between Ukraine and the United States, sorry. And maybe they can try and sell that to the United States.
Sell the plan to the United States?
Well, sell the plan, yeah.
Okay. Now what's Russia's take on the original point in the peace plan, but also do we know anything about how they're responding to Ukraine's idea?
Well, I think Russia was probably quite happy with the original plan, the original point. It's probably very unhappy with the Ukrainian response, and we're not too sure what the Russian attitude towards the plant is in the long run, because we have to keep in mind that if Russia feels that it might be forced to concede sovereignty through a peace plan, or if Russia feels that its forces will be expelled by the Ukrainian army from the plant, they have no interest in Zaporizhzhia, and they have no interest in it being a functioning nuclear power plant. So they could just trash it.
Yes, or even worse, sabotage it in some way, which could release all kinds of nastiness into the air.
Which is a significant danger.
Yeah. So do you get the sense then that Russia's actually using the power plant as leverage, as almost blackmail, give us what we want or we'll blow it up?
Maybe not in those stark terms, but without doubt it is a significant point of leverage for them, because they know how important it is for Ukraine to get it.
But it's important for them too, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, I think that they feel that it's more important to Ukraine than it is for them.
You're right.
And they can really leverage it, maybe to get concessions from Ukraine, or maybe to get concessions from the United States as well.
Understood. Okay, well, I want to go back to the peace plan and where this sits within those 20 points. What's your overall view in terms of acceptability of that plan to Ukraine?
Well, the 20-point plan is still going through a load of negotiations, and it seems that Ukraine seems to be reasonably okay with it. But of course, they can be happy with it from here till eternity, but Russia will probably say no.
Right. And there is, of course, another element to this, and that is that Zelensky has promised to hold a referendum to approve some of the points in the plan. That referendum, I assume, will include a question on Zaporizhzhia. Is that right?
On the question on territorial concessions, yes, they will be subject to a referendum. He has also proposed establishing like a demilitarized zone, a sort of neutral zone, which Zaporizhzhia could fall into. And so Ukrainian troops pull back and the Russian troops pull back, and it's possible that Zaporizhzhia will be run, well, according to the Ukrainian plan, on a sort of joint US-Ukrainian venture.
Right.
But it might operate within a demilitarized zone.
All right, so Ukraine's giving up its land, in effect, making it a demilitarized, an economic zone, I think.
Well, I wouldn't say giving up the land. They're just it would just be like.
But they no longer control it.
It'll be sold as a temporary process, or as a transition period, maybe.
Yeah,
until full sovereignty is restored.
Yes, well, we've seen places like that, things like that happen. I mean, you think of Korea, for example, north and south, and that was supposed to be temporary. It's 50, 60 odd years later. Yeah. We have some feedback, Vox Pop actually, from Ukrainians and their view of this peace plan. Let's hear what they have to say.
Honestly, I don't take it seriously. There are the thoughts of an idiot.
I don't believe Putin will accept any peace deal. He's a bastard that doesn't want to give anything up. He wants to grab everything. That's why I don't believe anything will come out of the peace talks.
I don't believe in it. I believe in the soldiers who are protecting our borders. I believe they will stand firm and that those bastards won't get through.
Putin is insane. His goals are to complete the special military operation, and he will fight until the end to accomplish them. We have to fight until the end with all the strength we have.
Well, not particularly hopeful that Putin's going to do anything to agree with any part of this 20-point plan. Your thoughts?
Well, that comes as no surprise. The colourful language used by those people comes as no surprise. It's one of the most recurring features that we've seen over the past few months or even years now, that there's a lot of diplomatic talk. There's talk about coalition of the willing, there's talk about peacekeepers going in, and it goes on, and then eventually the Russians stall and stall and stall and then do nothing, and then we're back to square one. And a lot of it depends, of course, on the United States or the complete inertia within the United States to apply any real pressure on Russia to shift. Russia is not shifting, and it hasn't shifted since the war began, and by all indicators is not preparing to shift in the near future unless something dramatic changes. It could change on the battlefield, or there could be some sort of mini revolution in American foreign policy that leads to incredibly tough sanctions and being applied to Moscow, but I don't think that's going to happen this week or this month.
There certainly doesn't seem to be much indication or hope that might happen. So where does that leave Ukraine? And let's focus again on the energy front. What options would Ukraine have, assuming, let's put Zaporizhzhia to one side for a moment, because it is, Ukraine can't access energy from there. How's it managing, and is it possible that they could expand into other sources of energy to meet their needs, irrespective of Zaporizhzhia?
Well, Ukraine is getting into renewables quite quickly because it has to tap into renewable energy sources, and a lot of renewable energy sources like solar can be rapidly deployed. And it can also import energy from surrounding countries, from Poland, for example. So it does have other ways of finding energy. It is still just about keeping supplies going in a very sort of hit and miss patchy way. The Ukrainian energy providers have been performing miracles since the start of the war to keep energy going. But it is a tremendous pressure. It is under tremendous strain. And therefore, that's one of the reasons why Ukraine would dearly love Zaporizhzhia to welcome it back into the fold.
Yeah, but even if they got it back, it would take some time to get it up and running again.
Very true, but at least there will be one less problem ticked off.
True enough. And of course, with winter coming along, this shortage of energy, it becomes even more painful to bear. So anyway, but thank you again, as always, Matthew, for coming along and laying that out for us.
Very happy to be here.
And have a very happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of this episode of News in Depth. Don't go away, lots more coming up. Goodbye.